Welcome to Ponchatoula Live. I'm Parker Layrisson and I'm your host. And today I've got a fantastic guest. This is one of my favorite people to talk to. He's a brilliant conversationalist, a really smart guy, super well known, and he has arrived at a unique point in history where he really knows Tangipahoa Parish government better than anybody you'll ever meet, particularly the history of our parish at that critical juncture when we made the change from the old police jury system to the modern parish president, parish council system. He served multiple times as president of the parish council. He served as a police juror before that, president of the Tangipahoa Parish Drainage Board, and much more. He married one of Ponchatoula's best women ever. I bring to you, of course, Carlo Bruno, the recently retired parish councilman of Tangipahoa. Carlo, welcome to the show.
Same here, Parker. Thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure being with you today.
Well, I'm really glad you're here. You know, most folks may not know this, but you and I are related now. I married your cousin's daughter, and my wife, Brandy Bruno, grew up your way in Laranja, Independence. You live kind of, I guess, in between Independence and Laranja. And I've been excited to get you on the show. Before we get into the stuff I mentioned in the intro, the parish government, you served in that role longer than anybody. I want to get to know you a little bit personally. So for our viewers, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Parker, I was born in Sweetwater, Louisiana, which is a little community between Independence and Laranja. It was two of us. Most people know my brother probably better than they know me, Nick Bruno, Dr. Nick Bruno, who was the president of ULM and happens to be the president of ULM again right now.
Well, I didn't know he was back up there serving. I saw him a few weeks ago at the Kiwanis Club. Of course, before that, everybody knew him. He was the number 2 or 3 man at Southeastern forever, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was there for a long, long time, and then he went to the Department of Education in Baton Rouge. So he's been in education for almost 50 years, and we always joke that Dad and them used all the money for education on him, and I had to be the one that worked in the family, but it's okay.
Hey, don't feel bad. We did that to Bree. You know, my parents sent my brother Jean Paul to LSU. He spent most of the money. What was left, I spent at Tulane, and then Daddy and Mama had Bree work his way through school while he was a cop at night. So you're not the only one to get that routine.
It's all good, but we were raised on a dairy farm. My parents had a dairy farm and a truck farm. We raised strawberries and peppers, and we milked cows, and it was a good life. You know, back then you didn't know anything any better because all your friends did the same thing. And, we had a dad and mom that were very strong-willed people that taught us, respect and treat people with dignity and, never let anybody let you know that you're not as good as they are. And we grew up with that. We were proud to have them as our parents, and I guess both of us were glad that both of them lived long enough to see both of us do very well in life. And I think they were very proud of us when they did pass away. But
I'm sure they
I
were.
go back to those roots. Actually, I'm still living on that same dairy farm. I wound up after my parents died, and I bought my brother out, and I still live on the same farm that my dad was born on 112 years ago. So
That's
left
such a
very
cool
far.
story.
Still there. All my kids live there, and I'm probably one of the ones that's lucky enough that I see my grandkids every day and get to see my kids every day. So I thank the good Lord every day of the life that He's gave me, and I'm very proud of that.
Well, you have such a beautiful piece of property there, and I thank you. You invited me to have lunch with you and some buds a few weeks ago, and I had a blast. But it was such a fond memory for me because I learned to ride a horse out there in Sweetwater. Remember the old riding stables they had out your way?
Yeah.
And my parents were showing a picture of that to us recently, and it brought me back in times 40 something years. But it's so neat to see you have that family compound because I know how important family is to you. And to have your children, your grandchildren, all of y'all there, and not only the beautiful homes, but hey, just cool stuff. It's a really neat setup, and I know you worked hard to earn that. Before we kind of leave the childhood part of that, tell me what it was like growing up there, because I was a city boy. My parents grew up. When I grew up, we were on 7th Street in Ponchatoula on the same block that your wife grew up on, I believe, just catty corner to that. And there wasn't much country, but I do remember visiting friends of mine who were in dairy farmer families. And I'm going to tell you what, that was real work. When you spent the night with J.J. Gill and his family dairy farm, you got your butt up long before the sun rose and you worked, and it was a different way of life. So was it like that for you? I mean, what was childhood like on the Bruno farm?
It was very, very, and you know, Parker, going back to what I said earlier, you didn't know any different. You know,
Right.
all of my friends that I grew up with and my friends that I have to today, they all were farmers' families too. So we would get through, you know, doing our part of the dairy farm during the day. And in the summer, we'd all meet up and ride to the creek on our bicycles. And that was a time when you could ride to the creek and stay there till dark and ride home on your bike at dark. And nobody had any worries at all. I wouldn't do that today, but
Right.
we enjoyed each other's company, and it was a good life. You know, it was a simple life. We didn't have a lot, you know, but what we had is what we needed to get by. And like I said, nobody else had any more than you had, so everybody thought they
Yeah.
were rich.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, it's one thing if you live next to the kid with a ton of toys in a 3-story house, but when everybody's on kind of equal footing, you just know what you know.
yeah.
That's really neat. Well, I'm sure that foundation helped you become the hard worker we know you to be in adulthood, because you basically had more than one job your whole life. You've always worked hard, sun up till sundown in a full-time job, but then you're serving constituents in the parish council, the police jury. Do you feel like that came from the things you learned on the farm as a kid?
Oh, there's no doubt, Parker. Like I said earlier, my dad, he had a third grade education. He had to quit school to come home to help raise the family. And, you know, we worked, and it was a very important thing to him. You had to do your work. And if you did your work, he didn't have any trouble with you going to play. But if you didn't do your work, there were consequences. And, that's the thing that you take through life. And I think I've tried to instill that in my kids. If you're going to work for someone and you're going to take these people's money to work for them, you've got to give them what they're paying you for. And I've been blessed. I have 3 great kids. They all on their own. They all married, got their own kids. And the best compliment that a dad and mom can get is when somebody walks up to you and say, I saw one of your kids today, and boy, those are some fine kids. And, that's the richest for me and
Yeah.
Donna. That's what we look at now in our older years, that, hey, we must have did a pretty good job with them, because they're getting the respect in the community that, that we had to get when we were their age. So I'm very proud of that. And I'm really proud that they all chose to stay close to home. They all leave to go to work. I mean, one drives to Baton Rouge every day.
Wow.
One goes all over the country. Dana flies all over the country with her job, but they all come back home and they want to be at home. And that's a really great feeling to have all your kids around you all the time.
Oh, I bet. It's I smile when you mention the word consequences, and learning that from your father, because that's been the word of the day around my house. Our kids are out for spring break, and I've seen the day go. They've lost video game privileges, dessert after dinner tonight, you name it. But my wife and I are working on consequences at this moment, hoping that we can one day be where you and Donna are.
You will. Just stay with it. Don't let up.
I've got a comment coming in from a dear buddy of mine, Steve Parra II. He said, called a tailgate neighborhood meeting years ago, and Mr. Carlo showed up and showed his sincere support for his district. He says, Carlo, you're a great guy who really did it because you cared, and you were a great guest. So, Parra, what do they say? It takes one to know one. That's certainly a great guy. Carlo, you're the kind of example of a guy whose family's been here 100 years, never left, Bruno Island, as some call it, in a century. Steve's a good buddy of mine who, grew up on the bayou. We met in high school, and then he moved to town to go to Southeastern and to go to work for my dad at the sheriff's office. And you probably remember him as the guy who worked the door. And of course, you remember Steve well. Yeah. But it's kind of part of what I love about our parish is there's this blend of old families that have been here forever, Brunos, Layrissons, etc., and then new guys like Parra who come add a little Cajun flavor, if you will, and make it such a special place. So
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a melting pot,
sure.
Parker. I look around where I live, and when I was a kid, you can go in a 5 mile circle of where I live, and everyone was kinfolks. It was aunts, uncles, cousins, nieces, nephews. Uh, Now today, there's maybe 3 or 4 of us that's left in that neighborhood in that 5 mile radius. And all of
Wow.
the people that's there now are people that relocated after Katrina and have
Hmm.
just fit into the neighborhood so well and became part of the country. And as well as I do, to live where we live, everything is 20 miles away. You
Yeah,
got to want to live out there. You
absolutely.
know, and that's why I never faulted for anybody that wanted to live in the city because of the convenience. But there's something to be said to be on your own piece of property out
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere. And if you just want to scream or you want to run naked through the field, you have
Right,
that
right.
option to do it. So it's the special person that can live out there, and it's really good to see all of these people that have moved here and adapted to that way of life.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people too, this world is it's changing and it's evolving, and our parish is growing so quickly. It's growing faster in some places than others. So you take a place like Ponchatoula. I was out driving today by Rosaryville. And I was looking, my parents are dear friends with Nietzsche and Dr. John Walker. They used to live there out in that beautiful farmhouse across from Rosaryville. And that place looks exactly like it did 50 years ago, but everything around it's changed. I mean, Rosaryville is still the same in many ways, but there's subdivisions in every direction. So back then, if you wanted to live in the country, you felt like you were in the country at that house.
Yeah.
And now you really don't. The house may look the same, but the neighborhood doesn't. And so people are looking out where you are, where you still have, big acreage and whatnot. And they're looking to get there. But I know what you're saying about, the convenience. Every time I go do the holidays with my in-laws up that way, if you forget the cranberry sauce or whatever at Thanksgiving, it's not like I can walk to Bonan's from my house, and your wife could have hit a rock at Bonin, and she could have been even closer. But out there on Bruno Island, you better hope the Piggly Wiggly's open or whatever, or
Oh
Hilltop's
yeah,
got
we
your
make sure that we have everything we need, so in case.
Well, let's move forward a little bit. You talked about the importance of family, and we're kind of joking about your wife. Share with us, if you're comfortable doing it, that love story, because your wife Donna is one of my favorite people. She grew up right there across the street from St. Joseph's School, here in Ponchatoula. And as you mentioned, that was not a time when, unfortunately, not a time when Italians of independence and non-Italians of Ponchatoula were romancing this all the time. But somehow, improbably, you guys formed this wonderful love story that's led to 3 kids and all you mentioned earlier. How the heck did y'all meet? And what happened there? How'd this come to be?
Well, it's pretty short story, but it's lasted 40 years almost. So I guess it's pretty interesting.
That's
But
the longest short story I ever heard,
yeah,
Carlo.
we actually met through some friends that introduced us, and uh, you know, Donna knew my brother Nick because my brother Nick in his early years worked for Mr. Billups. And Donna worked at the bank, and she knew Nick through working with him at the bank when he was with Mr. Billups. And we kind of hit it off and started dating. And Donna had a wonderful family. Her mother, the dad, grandmother, everybody was such beautiful people, and they accepted me into the family early on. And I guess we dated about a year or so, and decided that it was time for us to get married. Donna is a little bit older than I am. She's 3 years older than I am. So I like the older women, and I got me one that was a little older. But we got married, and we started our family pretty quick. A year after we were married, we had our first one, and 2 years later we had our second one, and then 2 years later we had the third one. But I can tell you, I was accepted into that family with open arms. And we lost Miss Joel at a very young age. She died in her 50s, and she never really got to see her grandkids and stuff like that. But they were
She
a
was a
wonderful
local legend.
family, and I
Refresh me
missed
if
them.
you don't. I'm sorry, Carlo. I talked over you. I apologize. Miss Joel was a local legend in Ponchatoula, and refresh my memory because I was a little kid. Was she like a draftsman or an
She was.
architect?
She had her office. Actually, if you pass her house and look on the end of the house, there's a little office on the end of the house, and she did drafting. That's what she did for
Yeah.
a living. And she was involved in a lot of things in Ponchatoula to try to be involved in the city of Ponchatoula. At one time, she ran for council. She wasn't successful, but she ran. But she did a lot for the festival and
That was
worked in
back the
town.
good old boys era. I bet that was pretty unusual to have a woman running back then.
Yeah, but they were really good, great people, and you know, Donna and I have had a great relationship over the years, and she's stuck me through thick and thin with me with this council. You know, I served on the council for 36 years. We had a baby that was 1 year old, and she was pregnant with another one, and that was during the time when the parish wasn't that great, and the phone rang off the hook all the time, and she could have easily threw in the towel, but she didn't, and she hung in there with me, and you know, here we are 40 years later, we're still together, you know.
Well, you know, you sound like my dad, you know, running with, I'm barely out of diapers, Bree's in diapers, and when he ran for sheriff, and it's chaotic. Let's talk about that leap, because as you mentioned, you're getting your family started, and you're doing so at a really young age, but you feel the call to public service. This is back during the police jury era. If you don't mind, because a lot of these people, especially the folks you mentioned earlier that are new to Tangipahoa Parish, they probably don't even get that we haven't always been a parish council parish. What was the police jury? How did it work? And how the heck did you get in business with it, or decide to run for it?
Well, the parish of Tangipahoa always had a police jury system, which was basically, in short, each police juryman was kind of the king of his own domain. The area that he represented, he was kind of like, you would say, the parish president over his little area. They ran into some trouble. There was some police jurors that had gotten in trouble, and the parish was in financial straits, and some of the leaders of the parish were looking for another direction to go in to try to change the basis of what the parish was looking like. And in 1986 was the first year that the parish council form of government came into play.
Okay.
Well, in
Hey, Carlo, can I jump in real quick? You mentioned financial hardship. Wasn't it so bad that the lights got turned out at the courthouse? You couldn't even pay the electricity bill?
Well, we did that. I was just telling your staff a while ago, that was my first meeting the night I was sworn in. And that was what was hit with us that night, was that the first vote was to turn the lights out in the courthouse, and we had to lay everybody off because there was no funds available. So just think about being excited to be elected, and then you have to do those things on the first night. But
the 80s were wild. You know, my dad took office shortly before you, and he showed up, and there's no police cars, no telephones.
That's right.
You guys were really thrown into the, you know, deep into the pool quick.
Yeah. But in January of '86, some of my buddies and all, we were all together, and the guy that had been in there for 4 years, he really didn't do a lot to try to help the community or help the area that was in District 4 at that time. And they said, "Carlo, I think you can do this job. You wanna try to run, and we'll help you." And I thought about it at first and said no. And you know, we had our own business, and we were trying to get our business off the ground. And the more I thought about it, and the more I looked at the conditions that the parish was in, I said, you know, I got to step up, and I got to do something to try to make things better. So I agreed to run, and all of my friends helped me. We didn't have any money. We did a grassroots campaign, knocking on doors, doing the things we did, and we won. We won big. I think our vote total, we beat an incumbent by about 1,100 votes in my first time ever running, and I was excited. And
who helped you with your campaign, Carlo? Was it just family, or who
it was just mostly my family and some really good friends of mine. And you know, unfortunately, I've lost a lot of them. They've passed away, but I had about 5 or 6 really, really close friends who went with me every day. They drove me, helped me put up signs, and you know, we didn't have any of the outside elected officials helping us. You know, the odds were really stacked against us, but I think I had a good family name, and my dad was really well known, and that was a big part of me getting a lot of the older votes, was through my father and mother. And very excited and won, and took over in January of 1987. And we were actually still, the police jury system had been gone, but we were still operating as a police jury system because the parish had no money. So we were doing,
y'all didn't have
at
the
that
money for a
time, we were
president
drawing, at that time we drew a salary of $600 a month.
Wow.
I was taking the $600 every month, buying diesel, gravel, paying a grader operator, and I would grate my roads and do what I could with the little money that I had. And I did that for almost 18 months. I never took any money, just trying to make things better.
Yeah.
And we tried to pass a tax twice, and we got beat the second time worse than the first.
Well, if you don't mind, let me ask you about that, passing a tax. I mean, my dad talked about when he got in office, doing that. They needed a tax to buy cars and radios and phones and all the things they didn't have. And he was blessed that it did pass. And, it only had to pass one tax. And it's still, I think, the only tax that's there for the sheriff's office. We recently saw the sheriff's office try that. They did not succeed in their effort. What do you think the keys are to getting a tax passed, and when's it necessary and not? And how do you communicate that to the people? And why did it work for y'all back then and it's not working these days, perhaps?
Well, I'm going to tell you, Parker, like I said, the first two times were horrible. We got beat so bad. And we all sat in a room one day and we said, what can we do to make people understand that this parish is broke? It doesn't have any finances. So we tossed around an idea, and all of us appointed one member. And parish president appointed a member, which was 11-member board of ordinary citizens out in the parish. We had some farmers, we had housewives, we had CPAs, we had a doctor, we had a lawyer, and we told them, look, the office is open, the books are open. We want y'all to come in, do whatever y'all need to do. It's open to y'all to do whatever you need to do. Come back to us and tell us what you want us to do as far as advancing this parish forward. And after 6 months, and some of these people were highly critical of us that we were hiding funds. After 6 months, they all came before us and said, look, y'all are not hiding funds. There is no funds. And the recommendation to us from them was a 1-cent sales tax, 75% dedicated to road and bridges, 25% to the general fund, and to do it as a 4-year tax so that it would be tied into our terms, that if the people didn't feel like we were doing the right thing with the money, they can vote out the tax and they could vote out the person that was represented. And from that point on, the parish took off. We passed the tax, and when I left office a year and a half ago, it had been renewed 9 times.
Oh, wow.
So we had no trouble. But
reading between the lines,
we've always been very, very transparent up there and letting the people know. And I think what the sheriff's going to have to do, he's going to have to let the people in to see that there is no money there. And I think he's going to have a hard time passing something until he does that.
So, it seems like y'all earn the trust with transparency, as you said, letting people in. And it sounds like even letting in your fiercest critics.
That's correct.
To scrub it, no barriers, no hiding the ball. And then, too, what I heard baked into that plan was accountability. It wasn't a tax that would last forever. It was a tax that you had to renew every 4 years. And, and the people could vote you out if they wanted to, and they could vote that tax out. And the only way you got to stay in 9 terms like you did was if, you kept honoring that pledge to the people. Seems like a pretty brilliant plan. When you look back, I mean, you mentioned 9 terms in office. So how many total years were you a parish councilman?
36.
36. Wow. That's incredible. I'm sure you learned a million lessons in that time. But which ones come to mind first when you think about everything you learned as a leader? Because you went from the young guy who was the new kid on the block to multiple times serving as the president of that council. I remember you well from the years I served as special counsel to the parish, and the decade I served as counsel to the drainage board, which you also chaired. you were often viewed as the straw that stirred the drink, whether you were in the chairman president seat at that moment or not. But what did you learn there, from the bottom of the rung to the top of the heap when you left?
Well, I'm going to tell you the one thing, and I always stressed it to the new ones that came on. Always remember, everything comes around again.
Great advice.
And you don't really think about that when at the time when you're doing something, especially things that are controversial. Those things, it may be a year, it may be 2 years, it may be 3 years, but something of that same magnitude is going to come back around again. And if you can remember that, then you can remember what you did then, and it makes that decision way, way easier to deal with. But I would say that's probably the biggest thing, because, I tried to be a student of parish government. I always was trying to learn.
Mm-hmm.
I memorized the charter. I knew what part of the charter the council played. I knew what part the administration played. And for you to do your job correctly, you've got to know those things, because you can't be crossing the boundary. You have a job, you know what your job is, you do your job, and then the other man has to do his job. But to remember always, whatever you deal with today, just kind of put it in the back of your head and remember that it's going to come back up again somewhere down the line.
Well, we've got a comment here coming in from someone. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I'm sure he was listening. He's been a student of political systems in our parish his whole life. My dear friend, Kevin Rayford. Kevin, Karen, I hope y'all are doing well. He says that Mr. Carlo is a great guy who's done an amazing job for Tangipahoa Parish. He's very glad to call you a good friend, and he thanks you for your service. How does it feel when you see a young star on the rise like Kevin, who's in his first term as our parish's assessor, giving you your flowers and kind of thanking you for your service? How does that make you feel, Carlo?
Well, it's great. When Kevin came and talked to me and told me he was going to run, I saw a lot of myself in him when I ran back in those days. Mm-hmm. And Kevin's a no-nonsense guy. What you see is what you get. He's a community person. He's a community activist. He does a lot with the young people in this area. And Kevin's going to have a long and distinguished career. And I'm proud to be one of his supporters, and probably one of his biggest supporters. And I wish him nothing but the best.
Well, I know you were one of the key guys to help him get that job, and he's always expressed to me that he's very appreciative of you for that. Kevin's one of these guys. I had him saved in my phone as Senator Kevin Rayford since he was a kid, because since we were in high school, I always knew he'd be something big in government. I got the job wrong, but I got the industry right.
Right.
And he's doing really well. And it's just a great family. And like you, he learned hard work and great values from two exceptional parents. His parents are just two of the best people in town. And so it's no accident that he's turned out the man that he is. So, folks, we're coming up here on the 28th minute here. We're here with retired Parish Councilman Carlo Bruno. As you see from Kevin and Steve Parra, who came before him, we have the ability to communicate in real time if you're watching us live. So if you have a question for Councilman Bruno, you just want to sing his praises, as Steve and Kevin have, feel free to do so. But please do it soon, because we won't be here live forever. Oh, wait, the great Tony Licciardi. Speaking of great public servants, Tony Licciardi, my good pal, and yours too, Carlo. He says, great guest. Carlo Bruno, you are a true public servant and a statesman.
Thank you. Another great friend, and I always leaned on him for a lot of questions that I had about, the legal end of things, and he was always a big supporter. And I try to keep in touch with him, maybe not as much as I should, but we got to have lunch, because
let's do it. Tony and I go to lunch all the time. He's one of my dearest friends. And, he's kind of a blend of the Bruno brothers, because like you, he served on a council. He served on the Hammond City Council for a while. And like your brother, he's an academic. He went and got his PhD, and he's just a brilliant guy, but also a very good guy. A lot of folks I meet in academia, and I'm blessed to teach at LSU and serve on their alumni board of trustees. And I like most of the people I meet over there, but some can be a little stuffy. I'm sure your brother Nick would tell you the same.
Oh, yeah.
Not Professor Licciardi. He's as good as he was the day I met him. And y'all just have a ton in common. Tony, thanks for tuning in and for commenting on Carlo. Carlo, I asked you, earlier, lessons that you learned on the job. I want to also ask you about, advice you would give to people who are doing it now. If somebody like Kevin, just starting out in public service in his first term, particularly people that are working where you used to on the parish council or other legislative bodies. The Louisiana legislature's in session right now. What advice do you have to those young folks or rookie, legislators and other public servants that from what you learned in your days doing it?
Well, Parker, I had an older gentleman back when I ran the first time. He says, son, if you can walk with kings and keep the common touch. And I didn't really understand what that meant, but it didn't take me long to figure it out. You cannot forget where you come from, and you can never forget who put you where you are. So if you think you're going to get elected and you're going to go up there and you're going to do what you want, and you're not going to return phone calls, and you're not going to go to meetings at subdivision meetings or any kind of meeting that you think you're going to get bad press, you're not going to have a distinguished career.
Sure.
I never avoided anything. I took my share of the bad. I took my share of the good, but I never avoided anything. I don't think there's anybody in my district can ever say that I intentionally did not call them back.
Right.
I either made sure I called them back or I stopped to visit them. And over 9 terms of running for office, I visited every house for 36 years when election time came.
Wow.
And I would have people tell me, what are you coming here for? I'm coming here because I still need you to help me complete the job that I'm trying to do for you. And people respected that. But I see these younger people now, they're so excited about getting a job, they forgot that there's a job that has to be done. And when you forget that, and people like Kevin is not going to forget that.
No.
I see Kevin all over this parish. Right. That's what you got to do. You got to keep engaged. You got to listen to what the people have to tell you. And it may be good and it may be bad, but you're going to get some good ideas out of the bunch too. Yeah. So just don't ever forget that it's an honor to serve. I always looked at it to be one of 10 parish councilmen in a parish of 136,000 people is a pretty good honor. Now, absolutely. It's not the parish president, but it's still an honor because your peers in that area that you represent feel like you're the best man for the job. Mm-hmm. So don't let them down. Just stay there, do what you got to do, hammer away. And look, you know as well as I do, I was on the end of a lot of losing votes. And I didn't let that upset me because I voted my conscience when I thought that something wasn't right. I didn't just go along with the status quo. I made my remarks and said why. And people want you to do that. They want you to be your own man. They don't want you to be owned by the status quo. And if you're a young person looking at going into politics, if you remember those things, you're going to be very successful in your job.
Folks, if you're thinking about doing this, now's where you need to hit that pause button, rewind it 90 seconds, listen to what Carlo just said, then rinse and repeat. Do it a few times, because he's giving you solid gold. Carlo, you're the only person I know that's been elected 9 times, but I've been around long enough to watch my dad win 6 elections, my brother win 6 elections, and the advice you just gave mirrors exactly what my dad told Bree when he decided to get in this. And for them to be able to win in landslides in each of their 6 terms, it's exactly what you say. It's governing as hard as you campaign and exposing yourself to those people, which is quite uncomfortable. Growing up, we always had a listed number, and people would call the sheriff. And then we got 25 phone calls a day as people would get arrested. Every grandma of every body in the jail would call, and we had to deal with that. Dad, most of all. But I think, and tell me if this was your experience, Carlo. People will begrudgingly respect you, and you win them over if you sit there in the gap and handle the heat. And it might be, if it's a grandma griping at a sheriff for arresting her precious baby she doesn't think could commit a crime, or if it's a parish councilman the day after it floods and they feel like if you'd have cleared their ditch earlier, it wouldn't have happened, or whatever the issue is. Like you say, vote your conscience, do the work, and then show up to hear people out.
Yep.
and that's a big part of the recipe for success.
And
Where
look,
do you see?
I've had people that were so mad, Parker, they would call and be just belligerent. And you tell them, say, now look, I'd like for you to calm down and let me explain to you. Well, when I got through, they would say, well, that makes sense. And I'm sorry that I called you and acted the way I did. But can you imagine what would have happened if you wouldn't have answered that phone and they'd have called 2 or 3 times? You're
Right.
never going to convince that guy that you're sincere about. But if
Yeah.
you take the heat early on, get it over with, tell the people the truth, and that's the big thing. Always be truthful. It's always going to be good results come out of that. And that's what I lived by from the day I started till the day I walked out of the office, you know.
So our buddy Steve Parrish still with us 36 minutes into the show, Carlo. And he says in his comment here, and show up at your house asking to speak to my dad. He's saying his dad. And he's alluded to a funny story. When Steve was in college, and we were good buddies, he was sleeping on the back couch one time. And some guy came in the middle of the night looking for my dad. And Steve's back there all groggy, and he wakes up, and the guy's like, I need to talk to your dad. And he's like, my dad's not here. He's in Lockport. Thinking Steve was one of the Layrisson kids. And anyway, that guy was kind of fired up when he saw my dad walk out and say, what's going on? But yeah, a lot of wild things. I'm sure that happened with the Bruno kids too, when things would happen with you.
Oh,
well, look,
yeah.
I promise I'll be respectful of your time. And I know you got to get back to Donna. But before we wrap things up, I want to ask you about kind of the state of Tangipahoa Hope Parish government, where you say things are going, and what you think we need to do in this next generation, whether it's through Kevin at the assessor's office or the folks on the council or whatever, the sheriff's office, anything. What are your thoughts on Tangipahoa Hope Parish in 2025, moving forward?
Parker, I really believe when I left, and I remember making a little talk with Ken Benitez about this. I think the state of our parish is in great condition. Now, there is some problems. I see one of our big problems look like it got solved just the other day with the school board being taken out of the DSEG case, which hopefully that's going to allow them to be able to do some of the things that they've been wanting to do, and it's been a long time coming. I think what we need to do is, problems are very easy to solve if you put your head together and work together. And I think what we're doing, we've got a good group of elected officials in this parish-wide and local officials. And I think everybody has a good working relationship together. And we got to keep that going. We have to keep that going. Everybody works together to make things better. The parish is working on some sort of a zoning plan that they're hoping to do in the next year. And I never was a big proponent of zoning, but I think the time has come in Tangipahoa Parish that some forms of zoning in some areas, especially down on the south end of the parish, is necessary. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some plans that are in the works that's going to be very likable to people on the north end and the south end. And it took some years to put a plan like that together. And I was asked to serve on the planning commission to help them work on this. And I have been on the planning commission for about a year, and we're working on it. And we should have something that we'll be able to send to the parish council, hopefully by the end of the year. But I think the parish is in great shape. I know the sheriff's department is in a little bind, and I think that'll work itself out eventually too. But you just got to work together. I mean, This is when you pull it on the road, it sure helps to have 3 or 4 other people helping you to pull it. And Absolutely. I think that's where we are. I know we had a great working relationship with the school board when I was in there. We worked together really well. The assessor, the clerk of court, the registrar of voters, the DA, we all had a good working relationship. And I think that needs to continue for the parish to continue to grow and thrive like it has so far.
Right. And we're blessed in that if the sheriff's office is the place in the whole, we've got a new sheriff, but he's also got people situated throughout the other parts of the government you've mentioned that really know a lot more than you'd expect about the sheriff's office. Our parish president, Robbie Miller, was a deputy for my father. Joe Thomas, his right-hand man, has a long history in law enforcement. Kevin Rayford, our assessor, who you mentioned earlier, another former sheriff's office deputy. There are a lot of guys in the mix that kind of can feel the pain of those deputies that didn't get their tax pass and are working for far less than they deserve. And hopefully they can all come together and make this work. We have another comment show up here, Carlo, from when you were giving out that advice. He said, my dear friend Marshall Graves with Love is the Key Outreach Ministry says he never wants to be in politics, but this is great advice. Since Marshall piped in here, Carlo, I want to ask you one more question, and I promise you we're getting close to the end. But so maybe I got 2 more questions in the bag here. So I promise I'm getting close. But Marshall does a lot of things. He's a man who wears many hats. He drives a school bus. He owns a business. He's a mechanic. He's a dad who follows his kid playing basketball all over the country. You name it. But his special passion is for kids in an outreach ministry that meets every Monday and Thursday at the local community center. And I know because he's a dear friend of mine, you see highs and lows. You see kids remove themselves from really bad situations and go on to do great things. The flip side of the coin happened at the Strawberry Festival the other day, where you see kids you mentored who once seemed very promising make the worst decision of a lifetime and be headed to jail and whatnot. So what advice would you have for people like Marshall working with youth, but also for young people in terms of, where they need to be going? Because it seems to me we have, real problems out there with the youth community. And a guy like you who's kind of raised 3 kids so successfully and now looking down at grandparents, worked in the public eye. What are your thoughts on how we can do better there and kind of get on track?
Well, I've got to say that I've had some great mentors in my lifetime, Parker. One of them was a Ponchatoula guy down here when we got elected at the same time back in '86, Sonny Wells.
Oh, yeah.
Great Sonny guy. Was a great friend. Mm-hmm. And Sonny was astute in the workings of parish government. He knew everything about parish government. And he took me under his wings. And Mr. Charles Buddy Rogers, I know you remember Mr. Charles Buddy.
Oh, absolutely.
He was another one. And Mr. Buddy Weir, who was the parish administrator at the time when I got elected. I could go to those guys at any time, day or night, and tell them I was dealing with a problem and I needed some advice. And never one time did any one of those 3 guys ever say, I don't have time for you, sit down and let's see if we can work out this problem. And what I tell my kids all the time, and, my kids have friends that have been around us for 100 years. They come and see us on Christmas and they're married and got families and they still real close to the family. I used to tell them it's very easy to choose one side. You can choose the wrong side or the right side. But if you take that little bit of extra time and choose that right side, it's always going to go well for you. And when you're working with young people are not as bad as people think they are. Young people are hungry for someone to take them under the wing, work with them, teach them things. And look, they may not like everything you tell them. But at least you're taking the time to explain things to them. Far too many of these kids are going home to nobody, Parker, and I see it every day. And the first person that latches on to this young person, whether it be good or bad, then you have a problem. And I think if these kids would just choose a little better, I know it's fun to do things, sometimes that are not right. But you got to think of the consequences. When you do something bad, you're harming somebody else. So just think a little bit. Remember, if you do a good deed's going to come back to you. And I would wish we had a better mentoring program in this parish. We really do need that because there's a lot of young men out there and young ladies that need somebody that they can just call when they have a problem and be able to sit down and talk to them.
That's excellent. That's exactly what I was looking for. And thank you for sharing that. We were talking about the school board and the DSEG case. Brett Duncan's watching you, Carlo. He says you are a local legend and he very much appreciates your service so much. Brett,
thank you, Brett,
for watching. And I concur with you on that. Carlo, I thank you for your patience. I've kept you longer than I promised, and you've been.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Parker. We don't get together enough.
I know, man. And next time I'm going to invite you down this way. I'll cook for you because you cooked great spaghetti for me a few weeks ago. Before you go, if you don't mind, and this really is my last question, if there's anything else on your mind, on your heart, anything at all you want to share with our viewers and listeners, please do it now.
Well, first of all, let me thank you again for inviting me down. This is my first interview since I left office almost a year and a half ago. So I hope you're honored that I took up yours first.
I am. I'm very honored. And you stuck with me
But-
for 45 minutes. I appreciate you.
But I'm going to tell you, I enjoyed every minute of my 36 years working for the people of this parish. I see a lot of my people every day, and I've made so many friends from this job that I had, which I never felt was a job. It was a calling, and I don't miss the job because I'm really honest. I was kind of burnt out, but I do miss the interaction with all the people that I made friends with over the years. And all I can tell you is I want to see some young people in this parish step up, and I want to see them step up and assume some positions of authority. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to stumble and fall. But remember, get up and go at it again because you're going to succeed. You can't never give up. You can explain that to people as well as anybody. I'm sure when you started this,
Hey, I've
had
lost
some
as
really
many
bad
trials
days.
as I've won, Carlo. It's tough
I'm
out
telling
there.
you. But you just got to keep hitting it. And look, people respect a fighter. They don't respect a quitter.
Amen
And
to that.
just get in there and do what you got to do. Take this parish and love it like I have all my life, and make sure that it keeps growing and that it's a place for your kids and my grandkids. And other than that, I can't say much more about what would be good. That should strike a tone with just about everybody.
Well, I appreciate you. That's great. That's great to end on. And I knew you'd be a great guest. I meant what I said in the intro. You're one of my favorite people to talk to, and this interview is proof. And I love your call to action for young people to step up and serve this parish. And I want to say thank you, Carlo. You stepped up younger than anybody and stepped up more often than anyone, and you stayed longer, and you served us remarkably well. And Tangipahoa is a better place because of that. And I thank you. To the people of my generation that I grew up with, from Kevin Rayford and Brett Duncan, who are with us here today, to Strader Dufresh Siatat, who was another one of my classmates. Everybody who did that, I say thank you. And I'm gonna end finally with my favorite quote of all. My beautiful mom is on here, Celeste Layrisson, and she says this about you, Carlo: "You're an amazing public servant and good friend." And then I read the end of the quote and realize it's not my mom. It's actually my dad, Eddie. He signed it. He doesn't have his own email or Facebook or anything. So Dad must be watching us through Mom's Facebook account.
Well, thank him. And he's been a dear friend, and I really miss him too. I don't get to see him and I was hoping he could have come with you up for lunch that day, but we're going to do it again.
Yeah. He was cutting grass, and my dad at 83 years old loves cutting grass about more than anything except grandbabies and maybe fishing or hunting.
Well, please tell him hello for me.
I will, Carlo. And y'all share so much in common. He says the same thing about retirement than you do, which is that he doesn't miss the job, but he misses the people. So, folks, we were blessed to have Carlo with us. I thank you all for sticking with us to the end. And Carlo, thank you for being with us. We'll see y'all soon.